My family wants me to reconcile with my father who left me for his new family, but I won't let him back into my life. My father was everything to me. He was the kind of guy who would climb mountains to attend his daughter's first soccer game, or laugh at my terrible jokes that no one else thought were funny. That is, until he found her. Her name was Delilah, and she was not the kind of woman who was simply forgotten. At first it was just for a few weekends, but the more time he spent with her, the more he became distant. I remember those first signs, late-night phone calls he would take on the street, his sudden disappearances for business meetings that had nothing to do with me. The rapid change in his behavior was enough to dispel the illusion. Then came the phone call. "You know, there are a lot of things about your dad that you don't understand, honey," my mom said one evening, her voice strained. The silence that followed was as thick as the air before a storm. "He's gone." That was the word. Gone. Not needed space or went on a trip. I remember the day my father told me he was leaving. His eyes were full of the same guilt I had seen a million times before, but it didn't soften the blow. He said he had to put his family first, his new family, and with that, he turned away from me as if I were a stranger. I told him that if he chose this new life, I was done with him. 2 years passed. No calls, no visits, nothing. Not even a Christmas card. Of course, my mom tried to reassure me, tried to tell me that he was still a good person deep down, but I didn't believe it. His family, his real family, was more important to him than the one that raised him, than the one that loved him with every part of their being. And then came the turning point, my engagement. My fiancé, Jason, was everything I could have ever hoped for. He was loyal, constant, and unlike my father chose me every day. At least, that's what I thought. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect it. One evening, when Jason and I were discussing wedding plans, he casually mentioned that he had talked to my father. My stomach twisted into a tight knot. I hadn't even told him about the divorce, the betrayal, the scars. How could Jason just jump into this? "He's a good man," Jason said, looking at me with that serious look I had once fallen in love with. "I think it's time we talked. Maybe meet him, see the other side of the story?" I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How could Jason even think about that? "No," I said, my voice shaking. "Absolutely not." Jason frowned. "You're being unfair. He's your father. Don't you think it's time you at least listened to him? It's been years." "I don't care," I spat back, standing up, my anger now completely consuming me. If he really cared about me, he wouldn't have left the way he did. He wouldn't have replaced me like an old t-shirt he didn't need anymore. Jason's face trembled, and I saw hesitation flicker in his eyes. "But he's sorry. He tried to contact you, and I tried to forget him." Jason was silent for a long time, and then he dropped a bombshell that I hadn't expected. "My dad is friends with him. They talked, and they think you're wrong." I couldn't breathe. My world began to spin. Was this really happening? "Jason," I whispered, my voice choked and my heart sank. "You're choosing him over me? Over us?" And that's when it all went downhill. The pressure I'd been carrying for years, the weight of my father's betrayal, the overwhelming desire to just walk away from it all came crashing down in an instant. Jason's words echoed in my ears as I ran out of the house. I couldn't do it. I couldn't breathe under the weight of this lie, this betrayal. But as I sat in my car, my phone vibrating in my hands, receiving message after message from Jason, my father's family, and even my friends, I knew I had to make a choice. And this time, I wasn't going to choose anyone but myself. When I agreed to give him another chance, it was on the most ridiculous of terms, but I naively hoped that this time, maybe he would get it. Maybe he would really respect the boundaries I had set, that I hadn't asked for much, just space, respect, and that he keep her away. Janet, the woman who essentially replaced me in his life. A woman who not only stole my father, but every ounce of love I thought we had as a family. And yet, everything fell apart in a matter of days. That's how quickly my family could have disintegrated. I agreed to have dinner with my dad and sister, and surely I could handle it, right? Just the two of them. It wasn't much to ask. But that night, when we walked into the restaurant, I felt like I was right in the middle of a trap. There he was, my father, sitting at the table with everyone: Janet, his son, his daughter, and even my grandparents. I froze. My heart was pounding in my chest as I looked at them. "What is this?" I asked, barely keeping my voice steady. "What are they all doing here?" My father smiled as if he had earned the right to invite anyone into my life. "If we want to fix things, you have to accept them," he said, looking at me as if I was being foolish. I could feel my blood boiling, the heat rising up my neck, pounding in my temples. Was this his idea of reconciliation? Of course, it wasn't just about making things right, it was about controlling me, making me conform to a version of the family I no longer belonged to. I stood up, pushing back my chair. "You broke the deal," I snapped, my voice shaking. "I told you no Janet, no kids. You lied to me, and I'm done." I started to leave, but when I reached the door, he did it. He grabbed my arm. "Don't go," he said, squeezing my hand tightly. There was a tinge of desperation in his voice, like a person clinging to the last thread of something they don't understand. It was as if a switch had been flipped in my head. I pulled my hand away, and all the anger that had been building up for years exploded out of me. "Let go of me, you manipulative bastard," I screamed, but I didn't stop there. "You've ruined everything. I waited for you to prove you could change, and look what you did. Do you think having dinner with strangers will fix everything? Do you think that forcing me to accept her is going to fix everything?" I didn't care who heard it. I didn't care that people were staring. I was beyond caring about it. And then it got even worse. Janet, the woman who had taken my father, stood up and said something that made my heart sink. "You're such a psychopath," she scoffed, her eyes narrow and cold. "You're just like your mother. Full of anger, full of malice." My father, trying to recover from the scene he had created, muttered, "You are behaving stupidly. You need therapy." And then my half-brother, who had always been a ghost in the background, stood up, muttering under his breath, "This is ridiculous." He walked out. And then, as if on cue, my half-sister began to cry. I could hear her sobbing across the room, and at that moment something strange happened. I realized that she wasn't crying because of me. She was crying because this was her family too. She was crying because she couldn't understand why her father had done this, why he had ruined the only chance we had left. And then, in a moment of absolute shock, my real sister stood up. She looked at my father, her face red with rage, and for the first time I saw the woman who had silently supported him all these years finally break down. "You've ruined everything, Dad," she exclaimed, her voice filled with emotion. "Everything. We finally thought you were trying to fix everything, and you brought them here? You don't care about her, about us. You only care about your new family." And then, in one swift motion, she slapped Janet across the face. Hard. I didn't even realize it. My sister, quiet, reserved, never raising her voice, had just hit Janet. The whole restaurant fell silent, and in that silence I realized something. My sister had finally seen Janet for who she really was. A liar. A manipulator. The woman who had torn our family apart. My sister dragged me out of the restaurant, and when we were on the street, she apologized again and again. I didn't know. I didn't notice it before. It wasn't just that she didn't see it, it was that she never wanted to see it. All these years, I was the one who fought alone, pushing back against this invasion of my life, the invasion of my heart, and finally someone understood. But, of course, my father did not understand. The calls kept coming, the text messages. Messages from everyone, my grandparents, his friends, even Larry, who still didn't understand why I couldn't just forgive and move on. So I did what I had to do, I blocked them all. Every single one of them. And with that, my real father was gone. He was gone forever. I should have known. Somewhere deep inside, I knew Larry wasn't the man I thought he was. But when you're in love, you ignore the warning signs. You ignore the little things, the gestures, the way he let his family control him when it came to the most important thing in our lives, me. And, to be honest, I felt guilty. For a long time, I felt guilty for doubting him, for putting too much pressure on him, for not seeing the signs sooner. But the moment I found out that he had been lying to me, the moment I found out that he had been keeping secrets, for example, that my father had paid for half of the wedding vendors, I felt like someone had stabbed me in the chest. He knew, but he didn't say a word. He chose his family's story over mine. He chose to let them trample on me, even when I begged him not to. How could I marry someone who thought it was okay to let his father manipulate and betray me? I remember sitting in my car that night after our conversation, just staring at my phone, my heart pounding. Calls from him, his family that I thought cared about me flooded my inbox. They wanted me to forgive him. They said that I was overreacting, that it was just a misunderstanding, that nothing bad had happened. But how could I let it go? How could I forgive him when the betrayal felt like a knife stuck deep in my stomach? I needed space. So I moved back in with my mom. It was not only about physical distance, but also about emotional distance. I needed to heal. I needed to find out who I was without all this toxicity. Without a family that betrayed me and without a fiancé who showed me that despite his promises, he couldn't keep them. As the days passed, I kept thinking about what had happened. I had to make a decision that was no longer about saving face or making things work for everyone else. It was about me, my sanity, my future, and my own happiness. So when Larry begged me for a second chance, when he showed up at my mom's house with eyes red with tears, I felt nothing but exhaustion. I had heard his promises before. I will protect my family. I will not communicate with my father. I will do whatever it takes, he said. But deep down, I knew he couldn't. He couldn't. I can't do this anymore, I told him firmly, without tears. My voice was steady, but my heart was completely different. You had a chance.
You made your choice and proved to me that I can't trust you. You can't stand up to your family. You're not strong enough."
Larry's face twisted with panic.
"Please don't do this. I love you. You're the only one I need. Let's fix this, together." I didn't say anything. What was I supposed to say? He lied.
He let my father, the man who destroyed every trust in my life, dictate our relationship. The man who secretly paid for my wedding, thinking that everything would be fine.
It wasn't. It was over. Everything was over. That day I left him. No big drama, no public fight.
I just left, and a part of me felt free for the first time in many years.
I had to do it.
He had proven that in a critical situation he would choose his family over me, and I knew I couldn't live with that. The next few days were chaotic.
Larry didn't take the breakup very well. He cried. He begged.
He tried to convince me that he would do anything to fix things, but the truth was that I wasn't the one who needed fixing.
It was him, and as much as it hurt to admit it, I couldn't help him. I couldn't fix him.
And then the problems with his family began. They started reaching out to me, putting pressure on me, trying to make me feel guilty so that I would reconcile. They told me that I was ruining my life, that I was selfish, that I was pushing a good man away. I was bombarded with messages from his friends, cousins, aunts, all of them telling me that I was making a huge mistake.
But I wasn't. I wasn't making a mistake. I finally realized that the mistake was trusting him in the first place.
Then my father came along.
He did not give up.
His messages were relentless.
At first, I ignored him. I blocked his number.
But he still tried.
He kept sending me the same tired apologies, the same empty promises.
And then, one day, I received a message from him that gave me goosebumps.
"I just want to make things right, honey. I miss you." It was like a punch in the stomach. How dare he, after everything he had done? After all the years of ignoring me, choosing Janet and his family over me, he thought a simple "I miss you" would fix everything? I couldn't answer. I didn't want to answer.
I had already blocked him from everything, and now I had to take one more step. I went to a lawyer and started looking for a restraining order. I had to protect myself from him. In the meantime, my sister, who was loyal to me no matter what, took her own position.
She slandered my father and Janet on social media.
She aired the dirty laundry of everything that happened at that disastrous dinner.
And the reaction was overwhelming.
People began to see them for what they really were.
Manipulative, controlling, toxic.
But it didn't stop. It never stopped. The phone calls, the messages, the guilt, they kept coming.
But this time I was ready. This time I wasn't going to let them win. I didn't know about the fight. I didn't know at first.
The world had become so blurred with chaos, rage, and broken relationships that it was hard to keep track of everything.
But when I finally heard, I couldn't believe it.
My sister Emma, the one who had been my rock in all of this, had publicly had a fight with Janet. I should have expected something like this to happen. Janet had been crossing so many boundaries for so long, and Emma had been silently seething with resentment toward her for years. But what I didn't expect was for it to escalate so quickly and become physical. It happened when they crossed paths in the city.
Emma's posts on social media about Janet's lies and affairs stirred things up more than anyone could have expected.
Janet confronted her, demanding that she delete everything, calling Emma a liar.
And then everything exploded. Janet hit my sister. A public attack in broad daylight. And what did my father do? He stood there. He didn't intervene to protect his own daughter. He didn't even try to stop it. Instead, he took Janet's side. That moment broke something inside of me.
I always knew my father was weak when it came to confronting Janet, but I never thought he would come to this. The woman he chose over me, over us, was now physically attacking my sister, and he was letting it happen.
That was the last straw.
Not just with my father, but with everything. Janet's lies, the betrayal, the toxic web they had created, it was all too much.
And yet, now I wasn't just angry with my father.
The whole town was gossiping, whispers spreading like wildfire.
People began to take sides, and, strangely enough, it worked in my favor. Some of my father's supporters began to back down.
I began to feel a little relieved that the pressure around me was relieved, although it wasn't over yet. There were still people who refused to see who Janet and my father really were.
People like Luke's family.
Luke's,
my ex-boyfriend.
He had become the personification of everything I was running from.
The manipulation, the lack of support,
the inability to see beyond his own family's narrative. He had gone too far, and now he doesn't even see the damage he has done.
He kept calling, he kept showing up, he kept sending flowers. But I've had enough.
I haven't changed my mind, Luke.
It's over between us. I texted him one night, and it was the last thing I wanted to say to him. His attempts at reconciliation only made it harder for me to move on. It was as if he couldn't understand why I couldn't forgive him.
He couldn't see through the pressure of his own family to realize that his betrayal was a turning point for me. Emma stood by my side, as she always did. She was my rock, and now it was time for her to stand up for Janet as well. After everything that happened after she saw how Janet treated me and how she attacked her in public, Emma finally did it.
She posted everything on social media.
She exposed Janet's affair, the lies, the manipulation.
She couldn't hold back any longer, and then everything went even further downhill. Janet took revenge.
She sent us abusive messages, yelled at us when we crossed paths, and even resorted to petty violence. My sister's car was scratched with her keys. My shop windows were smashed.
It was not just petty revenge, it was an escalation, but no one could prove it.
The damage had already been done, and the emotional wounds were deeper than any physical ones. Meanwhile, my half-siblings lived with my mother, but something changed.
The truth came out.
The truth that Janet was not just an innocent party in this mess. They began to see her for what she really was, a woman who had destroyed a family, a woman who had manipulated my father into a distorted view of happiness at the expense of his own children.
They no longer spoke to Janet.
They were beginning to realize that they had been living a lie. It was not easy for them, and I understood that. They had their own struggle with her, and they were stuck under her roof, but they made their choice.
And that's something. As for my father, it was a different story.
This time it seemed like he was actually making some changes, even if they were too small and too late.
And then he did something I never thought I would see. He reached out to me. He sent a simple message.
It read, "I'm sorry for everything.
I hope we can talk soon." I didn't answer. I couldn't.
He had his chance, and he wasted it.
But what I did do was start making plans to move on. For the first time in many years, I felt free.
I was living at my mom's, safe, away from the chaos.
And then Sasha appeared, my new kitten.
She was small, energetic.
As for the restraining order, I was not able to get one against Janet. I didn't have enough evidence, and the system was imperfect.